Our next guest, he has quite an illustrious hockey career. Drafted by the Detroit Red Wings in 1990, he has played 129 NHL games combined with the Philadelphia Flyers, the Winnipeg Jets, the Washington Capitals, and the Calgary Flames. He's a 1990 World Junior Champion with Team Canada. He is a Calder Cup champion, and last but not least, he is a former Prince George Spruce King and a former assistant coach of the Prince George Spruce Kings. Played in 87 to 88, and then an assistant coach from 06 to 08. Welcome to the True Blue Podcast, Stewart Malgunas. Stu, thanks for coming on.
It's a pleasure.
How's life for you, man? Obviously living out at Aberdeen. I'm assuming it's probably not the worst, but I guess just how have you been in these unprecedented times that we're living in?
Well, I think we're all doing the same. We're all in the same boat here, and just try to keep the family safe and go to work every day and hunker down after that, and maybe, hang out with the family a little bit, play some games, just wait for this all to be over.
And I also heard through the grapevine that this past summer that you had your first ever hole-in-one over at Aberdeen. Maybe take me through probably a pretty exciting time in your life that you got the hole-in-one.
Yeah, obviously you always hope to get one, and a lot of people never do, but we were on hole number 8, the par 3. I was golfing with, I got my card right here, I got to look at it. I was with Jordan, Tanner Felstrom, and Terry Felstrom, and I hit a 7-iron, and I said to the guys, that's a good shot or something like that, and it bounced a couple feet from the hole, and a little bit of a left turn and went right in, and COVID had kind of started, right? We weren't supposed to be close to each other, but we kind of all lost that for a second. We're all hugging and looking at each other going, oh, we can't do this. And then, so we had a pretty good shot about that.
That's awesome. I want to get into this hockey side of things. We'll try and clock it back here as far as we can. I think we should start probably maybe the junior hockey days. Obviously, you're an integral part of the Seattle Thunderbirds organizations for 2 seasons. But before that, you started in New West for a handful of games, 6 games it says here. And then in that same season, you went to the Prince George Spruce Kings. I guess, what do you remember about your short tenure in New West? And then, finding out that you're going to play with the Spruce Kings for the remainder of that season?
Yeah, well, what happened there was when I was 17 years old, I went to the New Westminster Bruins camp, and there's a few, obviously, Prince George alumni on that team, Don LeBrun and Mike Hawes. You might know Mike.
Yeah, I've heard of him, yeah.
And so, I went there kind of as a walk-on as a 17-year-old and had a really good camp, and it ended up being the last cut. And that gave me a lot of confidence to come back to play for the Spruce Kings. And Grant Williams was the coach at the time. He was my coach the year before in midget. And he put a lot of faith in me, and I think I really grew as a hockey player that year, because playing so many minutes as a 17-year-old, against older players and in a pretty tough league, I really gained a lot of confidence from that. And that was actually one of my funnest years ever playing hockey. I was, graduating that year. I had a lot of good friends on the team, and it's too bad we didn't win the championship. We were up 3-1 actually in the finals of the championship, and we ended up losing in Game 7, and it was a heartbreaker.
That was going to go right into my next question. That you guys were a really good team, and then again, Grand Prairie, 7 games, heartbreaking loss in the final. What was that playoff run like from your memory?
Well, it was a long time ago. It is still pretty vivid, actually. Just a hard-fought series. The Coliseum was packed. People were hanging off the rafters. It was loud. I remember playing Game 6, believe it or not. I can get back this far. Game 6 in the Coliseum was tied. In the third period with about 5 minutes left, and there was a shot from the point Grand Prairie took, and my defense partner tried to go with his hand, and it deflected off his hand into the top of the net. The goalie had no chance. And we had to go back to Grand Prairie to play in another sold-out building, and it was rocking in there as well. And I think they won, I can't remember, 2-1 or something. We just couldn't get it back.
What was that league like? The Rocky Mountain League. What was it kind of? Could you just maybe describe that league in a couple words?
a lot of older players. At that point, I don't think there had been anybody from the Peace Caribou League that had, received a scholarship or anything like that. It was more down in the hockey league where that was happening. So, we weren't well respected up here. I believe there was 6 teams. We'd go up to Fort St. John and Dawson Creek, Grand Prairie, Williams Lake, Quesnel. I think that was the only teams in the league, if I'm not mistaken. We played each other a lot, and there was a lot of fights. I had my first junior hockey fight in front of Prince George fans, and but only one, because when you're a 17-year-old kid in front of your friends and your family, you don't want to really get knocked out.
Or let's move on here. When you look at Seattle, so you go to the Seattle Thunderbirds after your time with the Spruce Kings, and you alluded to it earlier, the rosters you played for, especially in that 89-90 season, a lot of northern roots. Obviously you said your brother Kevin, even Victor Gervais as well, a long-time tenured Spruce King, to name a couple. But how did this end up happening, with so many northern guys playing on the same team in the United States?
Well, that's interesting. What actually happened with me in New West and how I ended up in Seattle was I was called up when I was with the Spruce Kings for the Eastern Road Swing. We went out to play with teams like Saskatoon.
Oh, okay.
And I hadn't grown. I believe I was like 5'10", 160 pounds, and that was a scary road trip for me. And I did okay. I didn't play a whole lot, but honestly, they didn't like what they saw, even though they didn't give me too much of a chance, which maybe I was glad they did. I don't know at that point in time. But US dropped me in the middle of the year, and Seattle picked me up. And so basically the head scout of Seattle came and watched a few games and took me out for lunch during that year. And he had asked if I told him I had a brother that played, and he said, well, you bring him to camp as well. And also, they had their eye on Turner Stevenson.
Right.
And back then, there was no bantam draft, so you basically just had a 50-player protected roster, and you could sign as many players as you want. As soon as you signed that player, they were on your list, and then that player would go to camp until you let them go or whatever. And Victor Gervais was already playing on the team,
right,
in Seattle. And so they had hadn't made playoffs in 3 or 4 years. They were a pretty bad team, but they were kind of retooling everything up. So us 3 Prince George guys, including Beck, I guess that'd be 4, got there at the right time as we were the team was on the upswing, and hopefully we helped make it that way.
And, the crowds in Seattle, they still seem to be electric, to this day. But can you really put into words how fun it was to play in front of American fans? Obviously, a bit of a different environment, but it seems like, looking from the outside in, is that, crowds in the United States are rocking every single night.
Oh, for sure. I mean, especially in Seattle, it was a college atmosphere. They would sell tickets, basically promoting it to the college crowd, because tickets were fairly cheap. And we would sell out almost every game, about 4,500 people, I believe. And it was just a party. They would sell beer in the games, and after every goal, they would sing the Gary Glitter song, rock and roll.
Yeah.
And you can YouTube some of that, and it's just wild. And the rink that we played in, the old arena, was a bit of a special rink. The stands went straight up like the old Boston Garden, and the corners were really square. You had to really know as a defenseman. You could actually stand behind your net, and you try to ring the puck, and it wouldn't get out. It's almost like in square. But so we got to know that rink very well, and by the second year, we had a team that could make kind of a bit of a run for it. And I think we still hold the home winning record in that for Seattle.
Wow.
If I'm not mistaken.
Is it true also in Seattle that you got to roommate with, former NHLer Peter Nedved? And what was it like getting to be with him every day? Obviously turned into a nice long tenure in the NHL as well.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Peter confessed, and they wanted me to room with him or bill it with him. He was 17, I was 19 at the time. and he didn't speak a lick of English. So that was interesting, in the same room with someone that didn't speak any English. But he was a really nice kid, and he just totally lit our league on fire. At 17, I think he scored 65 goals.
Yeah.
Like 80 assists or something like that. And then went on to obviously early first round pick to the Canucks, right?
Yeah, Vancouver Canucks, you bet.
Right, and I think our playoffs would have ended. We played Kamloops in the Western Final. It was best 9 back then, believe it or not. Just the odd dust up in those best of 9 series, chopping the team up. But they went after him pretty hard, and our top scorers letting go all, and they both came down with injuries, I think, on game 2. And we just didn't have the depth to beat those guys at that point.
Moving forward now, 1990, you get to represent Team Canada at the World Junior Hockey Championship. The names on this roster speak for itself. Barnes, Lindros, Breezewa, Ricci, Draper, to name a few. But I'm sure there was nothing like, wearing that leaf on your chest, and obviously winning it probably wasn't so bad either. And correct me if I'm wrong, this is the tournament style was different, right? It was just a round-robin style tournament?
Yeah, it was the last year that they did the round-robin style, and it was the year before TSN started picking up the games.
Okay.
There wasn't a lot of media exposure, and that's why they don't show our team. Like, there was no real final game or anything like that. You play every team once, and then whoever had the most points won. But we got pretty fortunate. We put Czechoslovakia at the time in the final game, and I think Russia had to lose or tie to Sweden, and we had to win in order to win the gold medal.
Okay.
And basically, we heard over the loudspeaker, we were winning at the time 2-1, and we heard that Russia was winning by like 3 goals or something heading in third period. So we were pretty down. And all of a sudden, about 4 or 5 minutes to play, we heard on the loudspeaker Finnish, and we couldn't understand it, but we had a Finnish trainer that Sweden had tied the game up with 1 second remaining. And so all we had to do for 4 minutes was hang on and to the win, and then we get the gold medal, and luckily we did, and it was it's probably one of the best feelings I've ever had in hockey.
That's a great story. I didn't realize that's how it was done over the PA system. That's crazy. Moving forward, draft day, 4th round by the Detroit Red Wings. What was the moment like when you found out that your name was called, that you got drafted to the National Hockey League?
Yeah, well, it was very special because the draft was held in Vancouver.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and my agent had told me that I was probably going to be drafted in the 3rd to 5th round. So I went down there with my dad, and my agent put us up at a nice fancy hotel downtown Vancouver, and my mom bought my dad a new suit, and me a new suit. He suits these days, maybe one. But I had my snakeskin boots on, and I went down, and they called my name in the 4th round. It was so special to have my dad there at the time with me, and we went out and we had some fun afterwards.
And then traded to the Philadelphia Flyers organization. When was that trade, and what was it like when you found out that you were going to a different organization?
Yeah, well, what happened there was I played 3 years down in the minor leagues for Detroit.
Okay.
In Adirondack, and lots of good players down there, and lots of great memories, and lots of great friends that I still have to this day. But after my 3rd season, my contract was up, and basically we got into a bit of some tough contract negotiations. So right before camp, I was dealt to the Flyers, and I was just happy to get another chance because it was looking like, for whatever reason, some guys had moved ahead of me in Detroit on the depth chart, so I hadn't yet played any games in the NHL, and I was looking kind of for a fresh start. I totally enjoyed my time with the Red Wings.
And then I want to move into this Calder Cup. You got to win the Calder Cup in '92. couple NHLers the guys that went on to the NHL, Keith Primo to name one. Stu, could you maybe just give us a peek behind the curtain, if you will, on some memories that stick out from that championship team?
Well, yeah, I mean, I think that's my favorite team of all time. My favorite coach was Barry Melrose. He was tough coach, but fair. And we played for him. We totally idolized him. We hung off every word he said. We had a young team. We had guys like Mike Sillinger, Mike Avazov, Dennis Vial, Sheldon Kennedy was on that team. Bobby Dollis, Alan Bester, just a load of talent, but very, very young. But we all hung out together almost every day, and really got to be like a family. And so we basically made it to the final against the St. John's Maple Leafs. That was obviously the farm team of the Leafs, and it was the first time that Newfoundland ever had a pro team. So they were on the Rock. It's called St. John's.
Right.
And that place was an absolute zoo. It was about the size, only held about 3,000 people. And like you talk about loud and crazy crowds in Seattle, like this place was off the charts. It was a small, and it was actually a little similar to how the series went when I was with the Spruce team. We ended up in the 6th game at home, and we could win and win the championship. And we totally played one of our worst games in the series, so we had to fly back to St. John's to put in this crazy rink with these crazy Newfoundlanders. And I love Newfoundlanders. I just love their passion.
Yeah.
They were lined up down the streets even before warm-up, and we basically couldn't even get our bus in there because of the crowds. They were throwing rocks at the bus. It was crazy. And so we get in there, and we somehow, we were down by a goal heading into the third period, and they had a 5-on-3 heading into the third period. And they run one off the post. And so as soon as one of our guys cleared the puck, one guy was coming out of the box, and so he had a breakaway, tied it up 2-2, and all of a sudden we had life, and we ended up pulling away and won 5-2. But just the feeling of electricity for all of us when we knew for the last 4 minutes we were going to win that game, and just hugging each other, and it was just a special moment.
Moving forward, you look at your NHL career, you played against some of the best, the Gretzkys, the Messiers, the Lemieux, the Yagers, to name a few. What's kind of the mentality when you play against these guys? Like, you see them on TV all the time, and now it's a legitimate reality that, you're playing against these guys, you're on the same ice as these guys as well.
Yeah, that's a good question, actually, because believe it or not, you're skating around and warm up. I think Gretzky, for instance, I played against him the first time he was playing with LA Kings, and you're skating around and warm up. And, there's Wayne Gretzky with his flashy silver stick back then, and you're just like, wow, this is amazing. And, but then once the game starts, you don't really focus on that. You just focus on trying to get the job done. But when you play against those guys, you realize just how good they are, because they're a step above. And I tried to hit Wayne Gretzky as hard as I could, and I couldn't. Too slippery.
Yeah. Well, you had a tough knee injury in your career. The torn ACL and MCL. Obviously, it's not easy for anybody, and for significant injuries like that in the 90s, obviously the technology not even close to what it is like now. What was the process like to recover, and maybe who were some people that really supported you throughout the whole thing?
Yeah, I mean, my knee injury really threw a wrench into my hockey career. It was right at the end of a rookie season with Philly, and we were in a pretty heated playoff battle, and just so disappointed to not be able to help the team to try to make the playoffs. But yeah, I blew my ACL, MCL, and all my cartilage all in one shot in a practice, believe it or not, in Winnipeg. But yeah, my girlfriend, obviously my wife now at the time, Cheryl, everybody knows Cheryl. PG legend. And, we had just started dating, and we were both homesick, but we had to stay the rest of the year in Philly. And I couldn't move because basically I had a cast on my left leg all the way down from my ankle up to my thigh. And so she had to drive me to rehab every single day so they could, kind of put stim on my knee and do all this stuff. And, we were both homesick. She could have abandoned me, and she didn't. And I think, really, really helped me along, not only physically but mentally. And she was actually after surgery, after I had the surgery, the doctor came and told her that I'd never play again. And, but she never told me that. And I'm glad I came back, and I wasn't quite the same as before, but came back and played a few more years. But she really helped me.
Moving on past your NHL career, you spent 2 seasons playing overseas in Europe, over in Frankfurt. Can you even describe what the experience was like playing across the world in a completely different environment? What was some memories you have from, probably, I'm assuming, a bit of a crazy experience playing in Europe?
Yeah, I mean, at that point, I was 30 years old. I knew that my NHL career was over. So, we went over to see Europe and just to kind of enjoy the game of hockey again, because it was, I spent a lot of time in the minors before then, and I was pretty disgruntled with the game and all that stuff. So we wanted to just enjoy my last couple of years. And, but it was a great experience. We enjoyed Germany, but it makes you really appreciate where we live now. Obviously, in Canada, it's the best place to live in the world. The hockey over there was really good. I mean, it was the top division, and a lot of ex-NHL players and top European players. Every game was intense. The fans, again, were really into the game and crazy. They drank and they smoked in the arena. You got smoke covering over the ice and warm-up. It was crazy. But our 2 years there were really fulfilling. We met a lot of great people, and it was a good way to end my career.
I want to get on the coach's side of things now, and we're going to start with the Prince George Spruce Kings. How did that come about to get that job in 2006, I believe it was, to be the assistant coach of the Prince George Spruce Kings?
Yeah, so what happened there was I'd been an assistant with the Prince George Cougars for 3.5 years.
Right.
And, as what happens in coaching, sometimes you get fired, and so the head coach was fired, and I was let go as well. And the Spruce Kings actually had gotten the Cup. They had secured that, so that was coming from Prince George, and Ed Dempsey was the head coach, and Mike Hawes was the assistant. And the powers that be with the Spruce King thought, since I was a free agent, thought that maybe I could help out, in the coaching side of things. So they asked me to come along for the ride, and it was a fantastic experience. We came so close. I don't know, how old were you? Do you remember that?
The RBC Cup?
Yeah, the RBC. How old would you have been?
Yeah, I think I was probably 7 or 8, and I remember, I led the team out in the opening ceremonies with a big BC flag, and I was there. I remember being there for the 5 overtime game too. So yeah, pretty young, but still fairly remember it.
Yeah, I mean, that 5 overtime game was a big, I'm going to say, at any level, that was the craziest game I've ever been a part of. And our goalie, I can't remember his name right now. You have it?
I don't right now, but I can get it up.
First name, Jordan White.
Jordan White, yeah, I just got it up here. Yeah, Jordan White was the goalie.
He stopped about 90 shots or something. We were so close to winning the championship for Prince George, but we just that 5 overtime game killed us because we just didn't have anything left in the tank.
Yeah, and I remember talking to Mike about the 5 overtime game and just how they had to switch the time of the final the night of because TSN was running the game, so even more of a not much of a recovery time for you guys after a 5 overtime game, but yeah, a crazy one for sure.
Yeah, that was a lot of fun. I think the coach was even cramping up on the bench.
Lastly for you here, Stu, before we let you go, I feel like we've just barely scratched the surface, but it's been great to talk to you here. You got to coach your daughter in midget, if I'm not mistaken, and you got to win the provincial championship with her as well. How rewarding was it to not just win the whole thing, but seeing your daughter win as well?
Yeah, I was very, very fortunate to coach my daughter since she was a little kid, and then to coach a strong bunch of girls. It's a really talented group. Got to coach them all the way up Pee Wee, and midget, and then to be a part of 2 winning teams with that group was pretty awesome, pretty special to coach my daughter. She was a defenseman, and sometimes there'd be yelling matches between her and I on the bench. But it was so nice to see a lot of that group of girls go on to get scholarships in good places around in Canadian college. We still try to keep in touch with that group of girls, but it was a ton of fun.
Great stuff, Stu. Again, I feel like we just barely scratched the surface here. Hopefully we can do this again maybe one time. Really appreciate you for coming on. All the best, and I'm sure we'll see you. We'll cross waves at Aberdeen.